Hi everybody, Robert Earl here at the Eco Ranch in far west Texas, standing in a hole. Why am I in a hole, you might ask? Well, today's project is to move my Greywater tank from where it is, which is in a position I don't want, to here. I also have to make it deeper, so I had to dig a deeper hole. So we'll get into that in a couple minutes. I'll spend a few minutes talking about Greywater disposal and blackwater disposal when you're trying to live a sustainable lifestyle, because there's some myths and there's some really good stuff out there that doesn't work and you shouldn't try, and I want to cover that because I think it's very important. But first of all, let me apologize for my Chinese made pants. Apparently in China, a 38-inch waist is about that much smaller than a 38-inch waist in the United States is. So can't send them back. Cost me 12 bucks to send them back, so I'm going to wear them and just tighten the belt up. So excuse the look, and let's talk about the water tank. Okay, this right here is my existing Greywater tank. Now what happens is we're standing about 120 feet from the main complex, the house. And the Greywater runs down this pipe, which is a 1-inch pipe. So before a plumber comments, oh, that's too small. Yeah, I know, it was all I had and I didn't have any money at the time. But anyway, it runs down by gravity to this tank. And I thought I dug this hole deep enough for gravity to feed it correctly. I didn't. It gets fed by a combination of gravity and pressure, so it's got to actually come up into here. That doesn't work, so the hole over there is deeper. Also, this is sitting right where the L for our hydroponics system is going to, our aquaponics system is going to be. And I need this spot, so this has to be moved outside the greenhouse. This is inside, it's moved outside to that hole. And that's what we're going to do today, is pry this thing out of the ground, move it, and then it's got to be replumbed with 1.5-inch pipe. Okay, I know I should use 3-inch, but it's going to be 1.5 inches, and that's the way it's going to be. It's going to be 1.5 inches. Okay, let's talk about Greywater for a minute, because there's a lot of people that don't understand Greywater. There's a lot of regulation out there that on the surface seems foolish, but it's designed to protect you in an urban setting from these horrible diseases like typhoid fever and, most importantly, cholera. Anybody that's watched a Western has seen the wagon train get infected with cholera and people dying. And look them up, but cholera is just a horrible dysentery-like disease where you just dehydrate yourself to death. And typhoid fever is equally as bad, although cholera, I believe, somebody can correct me on this, was more prevalent in the Old West. Now, you have to be careful of that. If your water gets contaminated with either one of those, then you have a situation where you can get that. That is why Greywater is discouraged. Untreated Greywater is discouraged to be used in anything in an urban setting, because you just never know what your neighbor's got. You might be healthy as can be, but your neighbor, for example, could have a type of hepatitis. Well, if his hepatitis water gets near your stuff, then you can pick it up. And so that's the reason why there seems to be some extreme legislation and laws regarding the use of it, and we need to observe those. I won't even hesitate to say that you don't want to observe them. You have to observe the Greywater laws and the blackwater laws in an urban setting, because it's just too much of a risk, and those diseases are just horrible. Even though they're treatable now and deaths are rare, they're still horrible. So, my untreated raw Greywater, from showering, washing dishes, washing clothes, washing hands, and from food preparation, all comes into this tank. Yes, it does get bacteria in it. Yes, it does smell, but we do only use it on the ornamental plants. We did use it in the garden for a while, but we don't have a garden right now. We will not be using it in the aquaponics garden because it just isn't set up for that. We'll still use it on the ornamentals. And I also use it for mixing my mortar and my concrete. So we do have a use for it, and it's better than just getting rid of it or piping it into the septic system. But you do have to be very cognizant of the fact that there is a risk, and you have to handle it carefully. Make sure that if you get the Greywater on you, that you wash yourself carefully. and watch for any signs of any disease. And in fact, you want to take a look at any diarrhea you get real seriously. And again, people are going to say, especially the butt crack building inspectors, oh God, no. Well, 43 states have laws that say you cannot flush your toilet using gray water. You've got to use fresh drinking water to flush your toilet with. Many municipalities will not let you use gray water for any purpose unless it's treated, and only a few municipalities do that. So gray water can be a problem. Black water is a different thing entirely, and I will get into, actually let me get into it now while I'm being boring as hell. Black water you don't want to jack with, period, the end. Black water is where the cholera sits, black water is where the typhoid can be. You don't want to mess with it. Black water, in the old days, we used to put it in outhouses. In fact, when I was growing up, we'd travel Route 66 and the Lincoln Highway quite a bit, and we could always tell when we were getting close to a town because the gas stations would switch over from having outhouses to having flush toilets. And the outhouse was the thing that could possibly carry that, those diseases. Nowadays, there's laws in almost every county about having a septic tank. It just so happens in this county we don't have laws that require a septic tank. And that's probably for a very good reason, because we really do not have any renewable groundwater here. Any groundwater we have is very deep and prehistoric. But still, when I was using black water, raw black water, on the garden, I realized one day that I wasn't handling it as safe as I could be, and if I wasn't doing it with the knowledge I had, that I shouldn't talk about anybody doing it, because most people wouldn't handle it as carefully as me. Which brings me to an excellent book, and I'll recommend that everybody buy and read this book. It's called The Humanure Handbook, and I've forgotten the author's name, but it's called Human Manure Handbook. I would recommend buying that if you're going to be in a setting like this, or try to live in a setting like this, or if you're already out there and maybe crapping in a hole. The Humanure Handbook tells you how to safely take human waste and convert it into compost that you can use safely on your gardens. And in a perfect world, it works wonderfully. It's just like that thing, if you know much about science, in a vacuum, if you drop a bowling ball and a tennis ball in a vacuum, they both fall at the exact same speed. In a vacuum. But we don't live in a vacuum. We don't live in a perfect world either. And if I caught myself mishandling my humanure, I know that many people, if not most, would mishandle humanure. I do not recommend to anyone that they follow the Humanure Handbook. Not that it's a bad book, not that it's a bad process. In a perfect world it is. But you just get lazy, you just don't handle it right, and that one moment's of laziness could create a cholera risk, and I certainly wouldn't want to do that. So here at the Eco Ranch, I dug a septic tank and built a safe septic tank and a safe septic system, separating only the black water from the septic system. I feel much safer with that, even though there's nowhere for any potential diseases to go and infect anyone, and the nearest neighbor we have is uphill from us, 1.5 miles away. Okay, 9 minutes of that crap. Let's get into moving this tank. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I'm back. First step is going to be to remove the plumbing, all the plumbing. I have a pump in here that's got to come out and some weight that's got to come out. I won't bore you by making you watch me do that, but I mean, 2 simple saws. I use a keyhole saw for one, and I've got the pipe wrench just in case I can't remove the other. So we're going to get them removed, then we're going to use this shovel and try to pry the tank up and see where we go. All right, guys, the plumbing fittings are removed. I pulled the pump out of here, and I had some weight in there to hold the pump in place. Got that out. I'm still left with, I don't know, my guess would be 20 gallons of water. Might be as much as 30 gallons of water in the tank. Now, I mean, just your rule of thumb, if I got 30 gallons of water, 30 times 7, 210 pounds, plus the 100 pounds for the tank, 310 pounds. I can move the tank up and down, I believe you can see that, using this pry bar. It's a little long, so I'm going to try to pry it up so I can dump the water out. So I'll come back when I get that done. Well, I got the tank elevated, and I've got the water out of it for the most part. Inside the tank, about that deep, was sludge. And you don't know what that sludge is. It undoubtedly was not very healthy. I'm trying to get the sludge out right now, and then I'm going to roll it up, wash it out better, because it's sitting, I don't know if you can see, it is sitting in that dark black icky sludge. It looks like tar. And it may very well have some oil in it, because it is kitchen stuff, and although we don't dump oil or grease down our sinks because we have dogs and chickens, it still gets down there, as everyone knows if they've ever had to take their kitchen trap out. So we're going to roll this up in a minute and see if I can get the rest of the sludge out. Okay, the wind has come up, so I don't know if I talk from over there, if you'll hear me, or even if even if you'll hear me well here, because the wind is up. So what the goal is to take the tank, roll the tank out of the hole that it's in, and then I want to stick the drains down where I can continue to rinse. So I'm going to try to get it right in front of it, actually right in front of that pole there, and have it upside down so I can rinse it out. Let's see if I can get it done. Gently, but first. Right, the next step, I've got it, all the sludge out of it, or as much as it needs to come out. The next step is going to be to roll the tank over and drop it as gently as I can, which won't be super gently, but as gently as I can into the hole. And I've got to get the manway, which is that hole in the tank, facing roughly the way my hand is pointing here. In other words, at a 45-degree angle, or parallel to that other pipe there sticking up. So we're going to give it a try. You guys can sit there and root for me to do something, or fall on my face, or break it, or something, and we'll see what happens. Gently. Now, one thing I forgot to do is put the pipe in the bottom of the tank before I dropped the tank. No harm done, because there's plenty of room for me to get in there and do that, but I made that error. It's also leaning a little bit towards the manway, so that'll cause sludge and whatever to drain down towards where the pump's going to sit. So I think I've got it just about right, and it's sitting below the grade level, which is where I need it to drain the my household gray water properly. So, okay, so the tank is finished. It's in position, and I've got the bottom plugged. I decided to just go ahead and plug the bottom. We're not going to use the bottom drain. The gray water comes into the top drain here and fills the tank up. I've got a pump for the inside of the tank. It's kind of a grinder pump in case I do get any solids in there. Grinds them up. I've got a hose exit over here for the hose to come out, and then the electrical goes in here. And what I'm going to do then is bury my gray water pipe all the way up to the house, and plug it in. And then when we want to water when we want to get the gray water out of the tank, we actually throw a switch to turn the pump on, walk around to the ornamental plants or to the cement mixer, fill it up, throw the switch. It's a great solution to the gray water system for us. As I said, gray water is an ideal thing to use for a lot of things, including flushing the toilet. But if you live in an urban area, you're going to have a problem with the storage. It's going to smell if you try to store it, so you do have to treat it with something. And then you run into a problem with your local butt crack building inspectors and the building codes, which in this case, when you're talking about gray water and sewage, really are there for our protection. I cannot stress enough the risk of cholera. It's a very real risk, and avoided at all costs, the way I said earlier. Also, this is a Noesco tank, and if you know anything about the tanks, I'm sure somebody will comment on that. They're not made to be buried. Absolutely correct and true. The only way I'm going to bury this tank is it's going to sit here in this hole until I fill it completely with water, which, if you see in the distance, it's been threatening to rain, but it's been doing that for 10 days. But I do have to fill it completely with water. Then I'm going to take a mix of my bentonite and cement and pour like a mortar cast around this. That'll protect it from any kind of fluctuations from when there's water in it or when it's empty. So that covers that. Of course, it would void the warranty, but it doesn't matter. This tank's 5 years old anyway, so it doesn't have a warranty any longer. And there it is. That's how I'm going to handle my gray water here from here on in with the entire compound. And I hope it was some kind of help. And do pay a lot of attention, I can't stress it enough, to what I said earlier about the disease factor. I highly recommend the book, The Humanure Handbook, but you need to look at it as a perfect world situation and realize that you and I don't live in a perfect world, even if you think, oh, I would handle it correctly. Well, Debbie and I thought so too, and we caught ourselves not doing it right, and that was scary enough. So read the Humanure Handbook, learn, because the more you know, the better off you are. But do go with proper handling of gray water, and especially proper handling of black water. I can't stress enough that a septic system is probably the safest way all the way around. Not an ideal situation, but the safest situation. So until then, help me hope for the rain off in the distance, and it's Robert Earl at the Eco Ranch. See you next time.